Tracy Bennett stared at two empty white chairs in the front row of the cemetery pavilion. Those chairs had been reserved for her parents. A soft vibration came from her phone. She already knew who it was before she looked. Her mother's message filled the screen. "She's gone. Your sister's celebration can't wait. Life goes on." For a second, Tracy couldn't breathe. A funeral director stepped closer and spoke gently. "Mrs. Bennett, we're ready whenever you are." She slipped the phone into her purse. "Just give me one more minute." Around her, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and teachers quietly found their seats. They carried flowers, photographs, and handwritten notes for the little girl they had all loved. The only people missing were the little girl's grandparents. A notification flashed across Tracy's screen before she locked it. Vanessa had posted another photo. Her parents were smiling beside a lake, holding birthday balloons, while Tracy prepared to say goodbye to her daughter. And before the service even began, Tracy made a decision that none of them saw coming. Tracy walked toward the podium because there was nowhere else to go. Several people glanced toward the two empty chairs. One of her daughter's former teachers leaned over and whispered, "Are your parents running late?" Tracy forced herself to answer, "They're busy." The teacher nodded politely, but the silence that followed said far more than sympathy ever could. As more guests arrived, those empty chairs became impossible to ignore. Her daughter, Lily, had only been 7. Every flower surrounding the small framed photograph represented someone who had chosen to stop their own lives for one morning to remember a child whose life had ended far too soon. Everyone, except the people Tracy had expected to stand beside her most. The memorial began. Tracy unfolded the speech she had rewritten a dozen times, but never truly finished. She spoke about Lily's laughter, her stubborn determination to learn every dance routine she saw online, and the way she insisted on waving to every dog that passed their house. Halfway through, her voice caught. Not because of the memories. Because every time she looked up, those two empty chairs reminded her that her parents had made a choice. Not an accident. Not an emergency. A choice. When the service ended, people formed a quiet line to place flowers beside Lily's memorial stone. Tracy waited until everyone had stepped away. She knelt, laid down one final white rose, and rested her fingertips against the polished stone. "I think I finally understand who my family really is," she whispered. Then she stood. From her purse, she removed a large sealed envelope she had carried throughout the entire ceremony. She signed her name across the flap, looked at it for several long seconds, and carefully tucked it back inside her bag. No one nearby knew what was inside. No one realized that everything about Tracy's relationship with her parents had already changed. The only question left was, who was that envelope really for? 5 days earlier, Tracy had believed her parents would be sitting beside her at the memorial. She had called them almost 3 weeks in advance, carefully choosing a date that worked for everyone who wanted to honor Lily. The cemetery only held memorial ceremonies on certain Saturdays, and this was the first available one after the headstone had been placed. Her mother hadn't hesitated. "Of course we'll be there," she had said. "Nothing is more important." For the first time in weeks, Tracy had allowed herself to feel a little less alone. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. Her phone rang while she was finishing paperwork at the therapy clinic. "Hi, Mom." "Tracy, we need to talk about Saturday." Something in her mother's tone made Tracy stop writing. "What about it?" "Vanessa decided to have her birthday at the lake this weekend. Everyone's already making plans." Tracy frowned. "I thought her birthday wasn't until next month." She wanted better weather. There was a long pause. "So, what does that have to do with the memorial?" Her mother's answer came so casually that Tracy almost wondered if she had misunderstood. "We're going to the lake instead." The words settled into the room like a weight. Tracy blinked. "I don't understand." Vanessa has already invited everyone. And Lily's memorial has been planned for weeks. I know. Mom, this is the only memorial service my daughter will ever have. I know that too. Tracy gripped the edge of her desk. Then why are we even having this conversation? Because your sister shouldn't have to rearrange her celebration. Tracy stared at the wall in disbelief. This isn't a dinner reservation. No. It isn't a barbecue. No. This is the only chance we'll ever have to gather and remember your granddaughter. Her mother's voice hardened. And she's already gone. The sentence hung between them. Life has to move forward. Tears filled Tracy's eyes, but she refused to let her mother hear them. So Lily gets one memorial. Yes. And Vanessa can have another birthday next weekend. It isn't that simple. It actually is. Her mother sighed loudly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Before Tracy could answer, another voice came onto the phone. Her father. Sweetheart. She immediately recognized the careful tone he always used whenever he wanted peace without taking a side. Dad. I wish things were different. Then come. You don't need Mom's permission. Silence. Finally, he answered quietly. Your mother already committed us. Tracy closed her eyes. So you're choosing a party. I'm trying not to make things worse. She almost laughed. For who? Neither of them answered. Her mother took the phone back. You're asking everyone to spend the whole day grieving. I'm asking my parents to spend one morning honoring their granddaughter. Vanessa will be hurt if we don't show up. And what do you think I am? Another silence. Then her mother's voice became sharper. You've always expected everyone to revolve around your feelings. Tracy stared at the phone. My feelings. You're trying to make Vanessa feel guilty for celebrating. I'm trying to bury my daughter with her grandparents beside me. No, Tracy, you're making the family choose. The accusation hit harder than the refusal. For several seconds, Tracy said nothing. Not once during the entire conversation had either parent asked the simplest question. How are you doing? Not once had they asked if she was sleeping. Not once had they asked whether she needed company. The conversation had become entirely about protecting Vanessa's birthday. Tracy finally spoke. I understand. Her mother sounded relieved. I'm glad. No. Tracy's voice was calm. I understand exactly where I stand. She ended the call before anyone could answer. The following afternoon, Tracy sat across from her attorney and financial advisor. A folder rested neatly on the conference table. The attorney looked concerned. Are you certain you want these documents prepared now? Tracy nodded. I've waited long enough. We can always delay. I don't want to. He slid a pen toward her. These won't take effect until you sign after the memorial. I know. He hesitated. May I ask what changed? Tracy looked out the office window for a long moment before answering. If they don't come. She rested her hand on the folder. Everything changes. Vanessa's lakefront birthday party was already in full swing by the time Lily's memorial began. Music drifted across the water as guests laughed on the dock. Children splashed near the shoreline while adults gathered beneath decorated canopies with drinks in hand. Vanessa posed for photos with a bright smile. One more, someone called. Tracy's mother wrapped an arm around Vanessa, while Tracy's father stood beside them, forcing a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Another picture was taken. Another round of laughter followed. No one mentioned the cemetery. At least not at first. An older cousin, Melissa, arrived late carrying a gift bag. Looking around, she frowned. Where's Tracy? Vanessa answered, without looking up from her phone. She's doing something for Lily today. Melissa blinked. What do you mean, something? The memorial. The conversation around them stalled. The memorial, Melissa repeated. Today. Vanessa shrugged. It was already scheduled. Melissa slowly turned toward Tracy's parents. I thought you two were going. Neither of them answered immediately. Tracy's mother finally smiled awkwardly. We had already committed to this. Melissa looked from one face to another. You skipped your granddaughter's memorial for a birthday party. It's not like that, Tracy's mother replied quickly. It sounds exactly like that. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table before someone tried changing the subject. But the mood had shifted. People who hadn't known about the conflict suddenly began whispering among themselves. Questions spread faster than anyone could answer them. Meanwhile, 30 miles away, the memorial continued quietly. Friends shared stories about Lily. Former teachers spoke about her kindness. Neighbors described the chalk drawings she used to leave on the sidewalk outside her home. Without planning it, several attendees posted respectful photographs online. A white rose. A framed picture of Lily. The row of candles surrounding her memorial stone. Simple tributes. Nothing dramatic. Within minutes, those posts appeared alongside Vanessa's birthday photos. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One image showed people standing silently with flowers. The next showed Tracy's parents laughing beside a birthday cake. Comments began appearing beneath the party pictures. Wait, isn't today Lily's memorial? I thought her grandparents would be there. Why are you at the lake? More relatives noticed. Family friends who knew both sisters quietly stopped reacting to the birthday posts altogether. No one argued. No one attacked anyone. The pictures spoke loudly enough on their own. Back at the cemetery, Tracy never looked at her phone. She greeted every guest personally. She thanked people for coming. She accepted quiet hugs. She never once mentioned where her parents were. She didn't have to. Everyone could see the 2 empty chairs. Near the end of the service, her Aunt Carol slipped into the back row. She had left the lake the moment she realized what had happened. After the final prayer, Carol walked straight to Tracy and wrapped her in a long embrace. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Tracy simply nodded. No explanation was needed. When the crowd began to leave, Tracy reached into her bag and removed the sealed envelope. She held it carefully for a moment before placing it into Carol's hands. Carol looked down at it. What's this? A letter. For your parents. Tracy nodded once. Carol hesitated. Do you want me to give it to them now? Tracy looked toward the cemetery gate, where the last guests were quietly walking away. Then she answered in a calm voice that surprised even herself. No. She gently closed Carol's fingers around the envelope. Please give this to my parents. She paused. After the party is over. The sun had already set by the time Tracy's parents pulled into their driveway. The ride home had been unusually quiet. Vanessa had thanked everyone for coming, hugged her parents goodbye, and promised to send them the photos from the party. Tracy's father barely responded. He had spent most of the drive staring out the passenger window. When they reached the front porch, he noticed a large envelope resting against the door. What's that? His wife asked. He bent down and picked it up. Their names were written neatly across the front in Tracy's handwriting. Neither of them spoke as they walked inside. Her father placed the envelope on the kitchen table. You open it, he said quietly. His wife frowned. Why me? Because I think you should. She broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, resting on top of several legal documents. She unfolded the letter first. It was only 1 page. She read silently at first. Then her voice grew weaker. Today wasn't about choosing between a memorial and a birthday. It was about choosing between your granddaughter and convenience. Her husband looked up. What else does it say? She continued reading. I waited to make any permanent decisions until after today because I wanted your actions, not your promises, to decide what happened next. Her hands began to shake. Beneath the letter sat several notarized documents. Her husband picked them up one by one. His face lost its color. These. He looked at her. These are legal. The first document removed both of them from every future medical decision concerning Tracy, should she ever become unable to make those decisions herself. The second revoked their designation as emergency contacts and guardians for any future legal responsibilities Tracy might establish. The third formally removed them from any administrative role connected to the Children's Therapy Scholarship and Memorial Foundation Tracy had spent months preparing in Lily's name. Each page had already been signed. Each page had already been witnessed. There was nothing left for them to approve. Her mother dropped into a chair. This is ridiculous. Her husband didn't answer. She's grieving. Still no answer. She's acting emotionally. He slowly looked back at the letter. No. His voice was barely above a whisper. She planned this before today. For the first time all evening, neither of them could pretend the memorial had simply been another family disagreement. It had been a line, and they had crossed it. Tracy's mother grabbed her phone. She called immediately. Straight to voicemail. She called again. The same result. Again. Nothing. Why isn't she answering? Her husband quietly folded the letter. Because she told us she wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. The next morning, the consequences spread far beyond their house. Melissa called first. I can't believe you actually skipped Lily's memorial. Tracy's mother immediately defended herself. You don't understand the situation. I understand exactly what happened. It wasn't that simple. It was. Before Tracy's mother could respond, Melissa continued. I saw the empty chairs. The words landed harder than any accusation. You reserved seats. Melissa's voice cracked. And no one sat in them. By afternoon, more relatives had called. Some asked questions. Others didn't. They simply expressed disappointment before ending the conversation. Years of quietly overlooked favoritism were suddenly impossible to ignore. No one could explain away photographs of smiling grandparents standing beside birthday balloons while their granddaughter's memorial was taking place. Even Vanessa felt the shift. She drove to Tracy's house 2 days later. When Tracy opened the door, Vanessa looked exhausted. I didn't know Mom and Dad weren't coming. Tracy listened without interrupting. I thought they were doing both. They weren't. I know. Vanessa lowered her eyes. I never wanted this. Tracy nodded. I believe you. Relief briefly crossed Vanessa's face. Then Tracy continued. But you still accepted it. Vanessa had no answer. After a long silence, she quietly asked, Can we just move past this? Tracy looked at her for a moment before speaking. I already have. She stepped back into the house. I just moved forward without you. Before Vanessa could respond, Tracy closed the door. The following morning, Tracy stood before a small gathering outside the Pediatric Therapy Center, where Lily's memorial scholarship would be introduced to the community. Several families, local therapists, teachers, and donors had gathered for the dedication. One thing was immediately noticeable. 2 people had not been invited. The dedication ceremony was simple. That was exactly how Tracy wanted it. There were no elaborate decorations or long speeches. A small podium stood beside a bronze plaque bearing Lily's name. Around it were families with young children, therapists from the clinic where Tracy worked, teachers who had known Lily, and neighbors who had quietly supported Tracy through the hardest months of her life. Every face in the crowd had one thing in common. They had shown up. Tracy stepped to the microphone and looked at the people gathered before her. "Thank you," she began, "not just for being here today, but for being there on the day we said goodbye to Lily." Several people lowered their heads. "I've learned something over the past year." She paused. "When someone is grieving, they don't remember every word you say. They remember who stood beside them." No one applauded. No one interrupted. The silence carried more respect than applause ever could. She explained that the Lily Bennett Children's Therapy Scholarship would provide treatment for families whose children needed occupational therapy but couldn't afford it. "Lily brought joy into every room she entered," Tracy said with a soft smile. "If her name can help another child smile again, then her kindness keeps living." When the ceremony ended, families signed up to support the program. Teachers volunteered. Local businesses offered donations. Several therapists committed hours of free treatment every month. What had begun as one mother's deepest loss was becoming something that would help children for years to come. Later that afternoon, Tracy met privately with the foundation's advisory board. The attorney who had prepared her documents weeks earlier distributed the finalized organizational papers. Everything had been completed. One board member glanced through the file. "I noticed your parents aren't listed anywhere." "They aren't. Were they ever supposed to be?" Tracy nodded. "They were." "What changed?" She answered without hesitation. "I wanted the people leading Lily's foundation to be the people who believed her life deserved their time." No one asked another question. The answer was enough. News of the scholarship spread quickly through the extended family. Relatives who had stayed silent for years began reaching out. One by one, they admitted something Tracy had known long before anyone was willing to say it aloud. "We should have spoken up. We watched your parents favor Vanessa. We kept hoping they'd change." Her Aunt Carol sat with her one evening over coffee. "I owe you an apology." "You don't." "I do." Carol folded her hands together. "I saw it for years." Tracy looked at her quietly. "I told myself it wasn't my place." She shook her head. "But silence protects the wrong people." Tracy reached across the table and gently squeezed her aunt's hand. "You came when it mattered." Carol's eyes filled with tears. "I almost didn't. But you did." That single decision had become the difference between regret and redemption. Across town, Tracy's parents found themselves facing something they had never expected. Distance. Birthdays came and went. Holiday invitations stopped arriving. Family gatherings became noticeably smaller. Sometimes relatives invited Tracy. Sometimes they invited her parents. Increasingly, they were not invited together. People no longer pretended everything was normal. Tracy's father struggled with that reality more than anyone. One afternoon, he asked if Tracy would meet him at a quiet park. After several weeks, she agreed. He looked older than she remembered. Not because of age. Because of regret. "I knew we should have been there," he admitted. She listened without interrupting. "I argued with your mother. You didn't come." He lowered his eyes. "I was trying to keep the peace. You kept the wrong peace." He nodded slowly. "I know. I've replayed that day 1,000 times. So have I." He looked at her hopefully. "Can you ever forgive me?" Tracy answered honestly. "Forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing." He closed his eyes. "I understand. I do forgive you." His shoulders relaxed. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." He nodded again. "I know." For the first time in his life, he accepted an answer without asking Tracy to make it easier for him. Her mother reacted differently. She sent letters, voicemails, birthday cards, holiday messages. Every one of them carried the same idea. I thought enough time had passed. Months later, Tracy finally agreed to meet her. Her mother sat down with tears already in her eyes. "I made a mistake." "You did." "I thought time would heal things." Tracy folded her hands calmly. "Time heals wounds." Her mother looked up hopefully. Then Tracy finished. "It doesn't erase choices." Her mother's expression fell. There was nothing left to argue. No explanation could change where she had chosen to be on the one morning her granddaughter needed her presence more than anything else. A year later, Tracy returned to Lily's memorial. The scholarship had already helped dozens of children begin therapy. Parents who had once believed treatment was financially impossible now watched their children make progress every week. Some wrote letters thanking the foundation. Others simply sent photos of children smiling during therapy sessions. Tracy kept every one of them. She carried a small bouquet of white roses to Lily's memorial stone. Carol met her there. Several friends from the clinic came as well. A teacher who had spoken at the memorial attended. Even 2 families whose children had received scholarships joined quietly. No one had been asked. They simply wanted to be there. The 2 white chairs that had remained empty during Lily's memorial were gone. They were no longer needed. Tracy placed the flowers beside the stone and smiled gently. Not because the pain had disappeared, because love had found somewhere meaningful to go. She stood, looked at the people surrounding her, and realized something she had never understood while chasing her parents' approval. Family isn't measured by who shares your name. It's measured by who shows up when your world falls apart. She took one last look at Lily's name, turned toward the people waiting beside her, and walked forward without looking back. The day my parents chose a party over my daughter wasn't the day I lost my family. It was the day I stopped waiting for them to become one.